Hello everyone, welcome to the last video for the Legislative Branch Unit 3. Today we're looking at the Nebraska legislative system. So let's just jump on into it. We are a little bit different than everyone else because Nebraska is special. Every other state, along with Congress, has a bicameral legislative system. That means they have a two-chamber legislative body. At the national level, that is the House of Representatives and the Senate. Most people in other states have a House and a Senate. Nebraska, we have a unicameral. And uni meaning one, bi meaning two, so it's even in the name, one versus two. We have a single chamber legislature. We have 49 total state senators that have 4-year terms. So we have a split between the 2-year terms in the House of Representatives, the 6-year terms in the Senate. Instead of having one or the other options, we have 4-year terms. And then half of the state senators are up every 2 years so that they're constantly rotating out or continuing to win the election and staying the incumbent. Our elections are non-partisan, which means party affiliation is not on the ballot. So when you're going to vote and you're trying to decide who is going to be your top vote, they take the candidates that are winning in the primaries and they're going to put them on the vote. So you can't just go and vote all Republican or all Democrat. You actually need to know who they are, where they represent. Now, if you do a little bit of research, it's pretty easy. You can go to Ballotopia and they help a lot of stuff trying to figure out where yours is, but it's a different way to do our ballots. We have committees for passing bills in Nebraska, just like Congress. It's a very similar thing. Most state constitutions take a lot of inspiration from the national constitution because it's pretty well written. Imagine that. It's been around for over 200 years. So our steps: the bill is introduced, then the bill is referred to a committee, just like standing committees and subcommittees. Public hearings in the committee and committee action. You will listen to experts again. If the public has something to say, they can listen in on it. Depending on the bill, they might be able to comment on it. Then the bill will get reviewed, amendments added, if anything needs to be changed. This goes through 3 times, essentially, where it's reviewed, amendments added, reviewed, amendments added. Because there's only one house for it to go through, when a bill goes through the House of Representatives and then Congress, it kind of has 2 full checks on it to make sure it's a good bill. And if they disagree, then it has the House Rules Committee and it goes through again. So there's a lot of double checking in Congress for bills to become a law. That's why they take a while. But since Nebraska only has 1 chamber, they built in this review and amendment phase to happen multiple times so that the bill can be reviewed and you get to think about it and the senators get to research it and make sure that it's going forward correctly. On the final phase, the bill is read out loud and must receive a majority vote, which is going to be 25 of the 49 state senators, and then it will move on to the governor, where the governor has similar powers to the president. He can pass it into a law, or he can veto. But one of the most important aspects is what's called a line item veto. Line item veto. If you have that, write it down. So essentially what that is, when the bill gets to the president, he has to approve the whole thing or deny the entire thing. What the governor can do, like, you know what? I don't like this line right here. I'm going to cross this out, and it's literally called a line item because he can cross out a line and say, I'm not approving that, and I'm not going to approve this part right here, but everything else is good. So he can, or she can, just cross out 1 line, or 2 lines, or 3 lines, however many they want, and that part does not pass. So when the legislative branch in Nebraska is passing a law, they need to know the governor, what they might approve, what they might not approve, and it gives a lot of power to governors across the country to be able to be very specific in what they approve and what they don't approve. So it's a little bit different of a role than the president and compared to the governor. And we'll cover that more in Unit 4 when we get to some of their roles and responsibilities. Now, the Nebraska Legislative District, if you can notice, this was 2011 because how often do we have a census? Every 10 years. We figure out our population. So if you remember looking at some of the maps before and counties, you might think, well, maybe this is based on population. So we have all of our counties around Nebraska, and you can see around Omaha and around Lincoln, you can't even see the numbers because it is based on population representation. So you have your counties out in western Nebraska. You can probably take a guess that they're not very populated because look how big they are versus Lincoln and Omaha. And you got Sarpy County right down here, so that's where Bellevue is going to be. But you have a lot more people. You have 49 state senators that need to represent just over 2 million people. So you can do the math. That's how many people are about in each representative district, or state senator district, excuse me. And if you did do the math, do you know how many people about are represented in each state representative district? I'm sorry, that was very confusing. Did you do the math? It's about 40,000. So about 40,000 people live in number 43, 40,047, 40,037, and 35. So maybe you could guess that, and if you know where Iowa or I-80 cuts through, comes down, cuts west, and out. So Grand Island, Kearney, North Platte, those are all going to be along the I-80 corridor. You have Lincoln, all of those little areas, Omaha, each one of those doing 45. Now we've talked about gerrymandering also. So for the most part, it seems that all of these counties out pretty much outside of Omaha and Nebraska seem okay. It doesn't seem too gerrymandered. And depending on how you look at Omaha and Nebraska, maybe they're gerrymandered, maybe they're not. Sometimes they're crazier than others. But for the most part, it's not too bad. Nebraska legislative does lean with a majority Republican, but there are still a fair amount of Democratic senators, and most of them will come out of the Lincoln and Omaha areas. Now, I just wanted to look at a couple more local issue things. When redrawing lines, it is hard to do it fairly and not give one party an advantage, whether it's accidentally packing or cracking or just trying to make everybody happy with equal representation. It's hard. If somebody could come up with the perfect idea, they'd be able to package it, sell it, and you could retire. So if you come up with that, let your legislative body know, because a lot of people would want it. Countries would want it. Now, another role that local city legislative groups have is to give incentives for companies to come and start in their city, because you want companies to come to your city so they can create jobs, so you can have economic growth. It's important. That sometimes can be decided at the state level where they give tax breaks, but sometimes it might be decided at the city level. So you have Bellevue, you have Omaha, you have Ralston, Papillion. If they're looking for companies to come in, they might give a tax break or a tax credit. Say, hey, you come here, this is normally how much you would pay in taxes, but we'll give you a credit for 5 years maybe, or for as long as they stay there. Maybe they'll give a workforce development where it's a specific job coming in, maybe mining or agriculture, whatever. They're going to need to have a lot of training. Maybe the city or the state will help pay and fund that. Maybe they have to build a lot of buildings, so the state or the city will help give money. There's a lot of ways that cities and states work with people to bring them in to create companies or to move their company to a specific city. Now, people in general find it easier to participate in local government because of proximity, how close it is. Ironically, though, more people show out at election time when it's the president on the election ballot because they feel that that's the most important election, even though there's elections every single year. But because of proximity, because you can go to city council meetings, You can contact people down in Lincoln easier. You could call them. You could even visit them. Depending on the state, local, city level, you might know somebody that's in politics, actually, and they don't go all the way. So there's a much more at-home feeling where it affects you more and people want to be involved more, and it's easier because it is close. Sometimes contacting Washington feels very distant, like it's not really a part of what affects you as an individual in society. And with that, we're going to wrap up Unit 3, the Legislative Branch. So let's start reviewing and get ready for the test.